Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories, where we play tales to take you away from today. Well, we have much to get to and much to tell you.
Okay.
We have some news.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
A story about running through a shadow. And an archaeologist in danger.
Wow!
So, let's not just stand here looking like a tin statue and play this 5-minute mystery.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by Really Bad Jokes. We've all heard them, like this one. How do you find Will Smith in the snow? You check for fresh prints. So, order your bad joke today before they're all gone.
Now, Sheriff, just one more question and my interview will be finished.
Okay, that paper of yours certainly wants to know everything.
What one thing in particular do you think is responsible for your excellent record in solving crimes?
Observation. Keen observation.
Uh-huh.
You can pick up a wealth of information from hearing and remembering seemingly unimportant things. I remember one time... Excuse me.
Sure.
Sheriff Crowley speaking. Yes? Suicide? Ada Belle Fredericks? I'll be there in 5 minutes.
I'm right with you, Sheriff. This is more than the paper bargained for. Shouldn't there be powder burns around the wound, Sheriff, if this is suicide?
Should be. That's why this is no suicide. It's murder.
Murder?
That's right. And I'd like to know where you two fit into the picture. I thought Miss Ada had always lived alone.
Well, I'm Mabel Foster, the old dame's niece. She asked me to come live with her 3 weeks ago as sort of a companion, I guess you'd call it.
Aunt Ada had very strange tastes in her choice of companion.
I'm just as good as you are, you money-grabbing Beethoven.
Break it up. Where do you fit in?
I'm Paul Westcott, a nephew. I came here 3 days ago to discuss some business arrangements at Aunt Ada's suggestion.
What business arrangements?
She was changing her will.
Yeah. Now I gotta share half and half with this chiseler.
I'm afraid you won't be sharing in any of it now, cousin. Murderers don't inherit.
Say, what are you insinuating? I was in the kitchen putting nail polish on my fingers when I heard the shot.
You have a nice manicure job there, Miss Foster. You know, I always smear mine. Haven't the patience to wait 5 minutes for them to dry, I guess.
Who's this female character?
A reporter. Go on.
Well, I was just finishing my left hand when Paul left.
Where'd you go?
I went out the side door to the garage, and I couldn't have shot Aunt Ada from the garage.
But I didn't kill her either. I didn't have any reason.
Seems to me you had plenty of reason, Miss Foster. Both of you.
Cousin Mabel probably wouldn't wait for me to leave. She was just fooling around with her nails waiting. I wasn't out of the house more than 3 minutes when I heard the shot. Mabel probably ran in the bedroom, got Aunt Ada's gun from the dresser drawer, and shot her.
Now I know who murdered old Ada Fredericks, and it wasn't Mabel. It was you, Paul Westcott.
You know how the sheriff trapped Paul, even though he claimed to be in the garage at the time of the shooting? Well, in just one moment we'll hear, but first...
Okay, this one sounds like a real puzzler. Until you hear the punchline. You know, we all make bad jokes, like this one. Why can't a nose be 12 inches long? Because then it would be a foot. Our story is brought to you by Bad Jokes Everywhere. Get yours today or the joke will be on you.
And now, back to our mystery.
You had to be the killer, Paul. Instead of going to the garage, you opened and slammed the door to make Mabel believe you'd gone. Then you tiptoed back into the room and shot your aunt. Mabel couldn't have fired the shot because, as the reporter here said, Mabel's fingers have an unusually nice polish job. Any married man would know that a woman sits around for at least 5 minutes waving her hands in the air so her polish will dry. But you admitted seeing her put the polish on less than 3 minutes before the shot was fired. Mabel couldn't have grabbed the gun out of the dresser and fired it. If she had, her polish would be smeared.
Well, that's what I'd call having an alibi at the tip of your fingers.
Nail polish solved the day. These mysteries just keep getting better and better. Unlike really bad jokes. Have you heard this one? What did one ocean say to the other? Nothing. They just waved. Well, that's it for this 5-minute mystery.
What's that you said?
We have lots of news and stuff this time. First, coming October 3rd is the annual month of Spooky 2017. This will be our 7th trip down the path of all things scary. As always, there'll be 2 podcasts each week. On Tuesday, we will replay a best of the best from previous years. Then on Thursday, a brand new show will take center stage. This year, we have returning guests Jim Harold, Sylvia Schultz, and the great Jason Dowd. Also, a few surprises await, and of course, great stories from the golden age of radio. We will open this with my all-time favorite thing on the Forble board. I hope you're as excited about the show as I am. We have this email from Brenda in New England. She does not exactly say from where, but from the email I gather she just might be a Patriots fan living in the Boston area. And that's just a guess, mind you. Hi, Ron. I've been scared to send in my story. I'm not sure why, but here it is. I love 3 things: the Red Sox, the Patriots, and ghost stories. Here is my favorite, and I swear it's real because it happened to me. It was about a year ago now, and I still shake every time I tell it. My friend asked me if I could house sit her grandmother's home. She had cracked some ribs while chopping wood and had been taken to the hospital for a few days. As you might gather, she's a tough old gal with grit enough for 12 men. She outlasted 2 husbands and will probably be alive long after I'm gone. Her name is May, like the month, is 85 years old, and is just over 6 feet tall. She had several cats and they needed to be fed. That's all I had to do, so I moved in the next day. The first thing that happened was creepy. All 3 cats were lined up facing the door as I walked in. They looked at me like I was toast or a nice smelly fish. I'm not sure which. They did not move and sat there until I said, "Are you guys hungry?" That broke the tension in the room, and they all scrambled towards the kitchen. I fed them and sat down to get a bite to eat for myself. That is when event 2 took place. I heard a voice. It clearly said, "May?" I jumped up and started looking around the home. It was a 2-story place with 2 bedrooms upstairs, a living room, and of course, the kitchen. I found nothing except the radio was on in one of the bedrooms. I thought this has to be it, so I turned it off and started to go downstairs. Again it came. "May?" It sounded like a question. Scared, trembling, and feeling like rabbiting out of there, I said, "She's in the hospital?" No response. I sat down to watch TV and then realized that May had no TV. I grabbed my cell phone and called my friend. She said, "Oh, didn't I tell you? May only listens to the radio." Great, I thought. I'd already used all my data minutes and realized that this was going to be a very long night. My friend promised to be my text buddy, and that ended night 1. The next day, I got up and went to work. I called my cell phone company and bought some additional data and was ready for a good night. I came in the door, and sure enough, the cats were all lined up again. After dinner, I settled down and lit a fire. I jumped in the most comfy-looking chair, plugged in my phone, and found a movie to watch. I was watching my movie when I heard a crash. It came from upstairs. I thought to myself that one of the cats has done something, and I ran up the stairs. To my chagrin, all 3 cats ran up with me. I said, "Dang, not the cats." When I arrived, I saw that a vase was broken on the floor. There was no reason for it to have fallen. I remember seeing it yesterday, and it was well centered. I thought it had to be the cats. That's when the voice said, "May." I screamed. The voice was right behind me. I turned, and there stood a shadow of sorts. I could see through it, but it was there. It was the shape of a man who was slightly bent over. I screamed again, and without even thinking, I ran right through it. I felt an impossible chill. I ran down the stairs, out the door, and into the car. I drove home and never went back to that house again. Now, I swear what I write is true, although most people don't believe me, so I've stopped telling my story. I have a new appreciation for the paranormal now, and that is how I found your podcast. I heard you on Jim Harold's Campfire. I can't bring myself to tell my tale on Jim's show, so you're welcome to tell it for me. Brenda. Well, Brenda, I can't promise to tell your story on Jim's podcast, but I will ask him. I think that there's a better than average chance that he'll want to have it. To you, I say thank you for your tale. It literally gave me chills on my chills. Wow. I would love to know if you ever talked to May about the voice. To my RAS listeners, I say, if you want to hear your story on the show, now is the time. It doesn't have to be scary. It can be about anything. The only criteria is that you tell it. Head to ronsamazingstories.com and click on the Contact tab. That's it. As promised, we have, for our OTR story, a detective drama. When the world of classic radio was dying, 3 shows continued on into the 1960s. They were Suspense, Gunsmoke, and yours truly, Johnny Dollar. The latter was a radio icon that aired on CBS from 1949 to 1962. One of the first to play the role of Johnny Dollar was Edmund O'Brien, the Academy Award-winning actor. He brought a fresh look to the show that stood the test of time. What we will play today is one of his shows. It is a story about how a quiet little scientist, played by John Dehner, gets mixed up in drugs and murder. The story is called The Archeologist and first aired on February 4th, 1950.
Johnny Dollar.
Why in the world are you down here, Dollar? Your train leaves in 45 minutes.
Well, I'm taking a quick refresher course in ancient history. You're sending me out to find a missing archaeologist, aren't you? Well, I want to be able to talk his language in case I find him alive.
Edmund O'Brien in a transcribed adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account. America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Great Corinthian Life and Liability Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of my expenditures during my investigation of the disappearance of Bruce Lambert, the archaeologist who never should have left his tomb. Expense account item 1, $7.50 railway and taxi fare from my Hartford apartment to room 317 Brighton Arms, New York City, a hotel whose front rooms had a depressing view of an 81st Street mortuary. Miss Lambert?
Yes, please come in, Mr. Dollar.
She was tall without awkwardness, had the physique of an athlete, but still with softness, and a golden tan made her seem out of place, set against the snow heaped on the sill outside the windows.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Dollar. I realize that mine was a rather unusual request to make of an insurance company.
Not at all, Miss Lambert. The company doesn't want to lose a policyholder any more than you want to lose a brother. But there are a lot of good private detectives in New York.
I couldn't afford one. I had thought of notifying the police, but I realized that Bruce's case would be just one of many to them. They're so impersonal. And if there's a chance of any notoriety...
Miss Lambert, if you mean that for some reason you'd rather the police didn't find him, you'd better tell me about it.
Yes, of course I was going to. I don't see how it could make any difference. Please sit down.
Maybe we'd better start way back at the beginning, huh? That would be in Egypt, wouldn't it?
Yes. In the desert some 100 miles west of Thebes. My brother's an archaeologist, and he'd uncovered some ruins. It was quite an important discovery, something about the 12th dynasty. I don't know much about it.
You were with him?
Yes, I didn't spend much time at the excavation site. I stayed in the village. But the reason the police might make it difficult is that Bruce discovered some relics that he didn't declare to the authorities there.
You mean he swiped them?
Well, if you're in the habit of using extreme bluntness, I suppose you could put it that way.
All right, I'm sorry.
Please, Mr. Dollar, this is quite unpleasant for me. If Bruce had stolen all the relics, you wouldn't expect it to make any difference in how I felt about his disappearance, would you?
Well, I'm afraid I can't do anything for you. I've got to know these things if I'm going to help you.
Wait. I'm sorry. I'll tell you everything I know.
All right. What were those relics that your brother didn't declare?
Well, I'm not sure how many there were. There was some statuary, an obsidian head of some old king, and then there was a scarab. It was supposed to have been the official seal of this king.
Do you know how valuable this stuff is?
I'm afraid that it might be very valuable in some circles. That's what I was afraid of, that someone harmed Bruce or even... But there's so many things to be afraid of. He isn't strong. Maybe even his mind. He was injured quite severely in a traffic accident in Alexandria just before we left Egypt. I've got to find out what could have happened to him.
Oh, come on. We can't find out this way. What does your brother look like? Is he light or dark?
Here's a snapshot.
Oh.
He's blonde. His hair is straight and was quite long when I last saw him.
And that was 4 days ago?
Yes. The day our ship docked, I was arranging for my luggage. He just disappeared.
What else? What's his build? Slight, medium, heavy?
Slight, I'd say.
What about his clothes?
Well, he was wearing a dark blue suit and a gray overcoat. The right sleeve of both would be empty, because his right arm and shoulder are in a cast.
Uh-huh. A traffic accident. Huh?
Yes, both were fractured. I wish I were able to be more help. But I've told you everything I know. He just vanished.
Did he have any enemies that you know of?
No, there's not even that. I can't let myself lose hope. But what can we do? How do you start looking for somebody with so little to go on?
Before I answered her question, we started at the beginning again. The second run-through was pretty much like the first. But disappearance from a foreign ship in the port of New York, is not as easy as the telling of it. I left the troubled Marcia, checked into an 8th floor room in the Brighton Arms, where a phone call told me the North Fleet had already sailed. No hope of information there. So I headed for the U.S. Customs Office.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes?
Well, my name is Dollar. I'm an insurance investigator. The girl outside said you could help me. I'd like to get some information on a passenger who arrived from Alexandria on the North Fleet.
North Fleet. Well, I'd have to know the day of arrival and the name of the line.
It was 4 days ago. They'd made it... that would make it the 20th. It's a British ship.
North Fleet. Well, no. What was the passenger's name?
Lambert. Bruce Lambert. Did he clear any luggage through customs?
Bruce Lambert. Yeah. Witnessed the examination of one piece of luggage, a suitcase, personal effects, one piece of statuary purchased in Alexandria, no duty.
What address did he give you?
Bruce Lambert. No street number, no hotel, the Brighton Arms.
Oh, the Brighton Arms. Well, don't count on that. Expense account item 2, $30, which, with my ID card, helped impress the cab drivers who worked the entrance to the pier where the North Fleet had docked. Checking these cabs took the whole afternoon, and midway through it, I realized I wasn't the only one interested in that particular hack stand. I wasn't sure at what moment I'd actually noticed him. He was doing a very bad job of hiding behind a Journal American on the other side of the street. All I could see was the lower half of an overcoat, the seam of some razor-sharp trousers, and some pointed shoes. But I began to feel his eyes looking at me as I went on with my questioning. That finally paid off through the mouth of driver number 782.
You know, you meet all kinds in this business. Some you forget, and some others you remember.
Yeah, well, do you remember a guy with his arm and shoulder in a cast?
And something you learn in this business. That's to read people's faces. You get to know a deadbeat before he gets a chance to deadbeat you. And you catch on if a guy is scared of something.
Well, if he was afraid of something, it's not me. He's been reported missing by his sister. I've been hired to find him. How much does $10 buy?
You know, maybe he don't want to be found.
Is that what you think?
Sure. He paid me more to climb up than you offered.
Well, I've got more.
What are you going to do with him?
I want to talk to him. I want to find out if he's all right. If he wants to stay lost, that's his business, not mine. How's 25?
Get in, my boy. It's not very far from here.
Our destination turned out to be an old red brick hotel near 39th Street between 10th and 11th Avenue. And it occurred to me that as an archaeologist, Lambert was running true to form. He'd even used some ruins to hold up in. One $5 bill brought the information from the room clerk that Lambert was out of his room, and another brought a pass key that let me in. The first thing to catch my eye when I switched on the light was a black piece of statuary shining dully on a chipped bureau, a crowned head with exaggerated features sculptured in obsidian. I posed myself this riddle. If it was so valuable, why didn't Lambert take better care of it? But before I had a chance to try for the answer, a foot nudged the door open behind me. As might be expected, it was wearing a pointed shoe and was followed into the room by a slight yellow ivory-skinned man who rather resembled the black statue.
I must thank you for leading us to the hiding place. Where is he?
Well, that depends on who he's hiding from. It looks like it's you.
Perhaps it is that you do not know where he is.
Yeah, perhaps.
I followed your taxi after you talked with those drivers.
That was very smart. Where did you think I expected you to go? What's your interest in Lambert?
You were employed by the girl to find him. How much does she pay you?
I never talk money with a stranger.
Perhaps we will not be strangers for long. The point of importance is that you have not yet found him. Mr. Drummond will pay you $2,000 to do so.
Mr. Drummond is generous, but what makes you so sure I haven't found Lambert?
Because he is not here.
Well, that only means he's someplace else.
Please, I have no wish for violence.
Well, then put that thing away. In the first place, gunfire, even in this neighborhood, is going to bring the law. In the second place, that's a lady's gun. One of those handbag jobs. You know, you ought to be ashamed of yourself for carrying it.
Please, I have no wish to use it.
And get rid of it. I hate little men who try to play bully. But there was more than that behind my fist. I figured I could learn to know him better if he was quietly stretched out on the floor. I was half right. An Egyptian passport told me that his name was Ammon Hyksos. Hometown, Alexandria. There was nothing else. I could turn Hyksos over to the police on an assault charge, or I could wait until he woke up and try knocking some information out of him. But I didn't do either. I left him there in the lobby. I gave a message to the room clerk for Lambert, telling him to stay out of his room when he came back, and to phone me at the Brighton Arms.
Who is it?
Dollar.
Oh, just a second.
Is there any news? Did you learn anything, Mr. Dollar?
Yeah, I made some progress. I met Ammon Hyksos. You told me your brother didn't have any enemies. That little Egyptian is out looking for him with a gun. Why'd you lie to me?
I have no right to ask you to believe me now.
That's so true.
But I wish you would. Please come here and sit down.
No, thanks. You sit there and I'll stand here. I think I'll be less inclined to believe you from here.
That's not fair. I know. I wasn't fair with you either. I want to be. But there are some things I just can't tell you.
Why not?
Well, I can't tell you that either.
No, nuts. Women like you make everything tougher than it should be. You demand all, but you give nothing. You ask to be trusted, and you won't trust. You make yourselves look soft when you're as hard as steel. You've got warmth, but you only turn it on when you get something out of it.
You're wrong. I was trying to help him. Or us. I had to lie.
Look, I started this thing wanting to help you. There was something personal about it. But you wanted me to do things your way and not mine. Well, we just stopped doing that.
Please leave me alone. Just go away. Go back to Hartford and forget you were ever here.
I wish I could. But I'm working for an insurance company looking for a missing policy holder. Well, I'll be up in my room if you decide to help me find it. Yep.
Is this Mr. Dollar?
That's right.
This is Bruce Lambert. I got your message to call.
Where are you now?
Not so fast. There were 2 attempts on my life while I was on my way here from Alexandria. I'm not anxious to tell anybody where I am. How did you get into this?
Marcia called your insurance company when you took the run out. They hired me.
Good for Marcia. Is she all right?
Well, that depends on your point of view. I suppose she's being the helpful sister to you, but for me, she's done nothing but act mysterious.
I don't get it.
But she won't tell the truth about you. I hope you do better.
She told you she was my sister?
Well, sure she did. Why shouldn't she?
Well, I can't see why she'd do that.
She isn't your sister?
No, I don't understand it. She's my fiancée. I don't understand it at all. Where is she? I better talk to her.
That's a good idea. Room 317, Brighton Arms. I'll be there with her, waiting for you. Which, in a way, was how it worked out. Except that I waited for him in the corridor outside her room. I left Marcia where I found her. She was on the bathroom floor, where she died from wounds inflicted by the proverbial blunt instrument, and where her lies had died with her. Bruce Lambert?
Yes?
It's all right, I'm Dollar. Didn't take you long to get here. Where'd you phone from?
Just around the corner. Bar. Why do you ask? Where's Marcia?
Marcia's dead.
I don't believe you. I want to go in there. She isn't dead. Let me in there.
Come on, use your head, will you? There's nothing... Oh, your arm. I'm sorry. Look, you don't want to go in there. Believe me, you don't. There's nothing you can do for her.
She can't be dead. She can't be.
Come on.
Where? Why?
I want you to come up to my room with me. You've got to do two things. First, give me every reason you can think of why this should have happened. And then, before the police get here, you'd better start rehearsing a story of your own. Now, Abbott, the first hole in Marcia's story is that she wasn't in Thebes while you were working on your ruins.
That's right. I didn't even know her then. I met her in the hospital in Alexandria after my accident. I was there for 2 months, you see. She was my nurse.
But she did know about the relics. That statue and the scarab that I haven't seen.
Oh, yes. Here it is. This is the scarab. Oh, yes, she knew. We talked about my little deceit.
Well, how little is it really? You talk about 2 attempts on your life. Now we have actual murder. You'd better let me have that scarab.
Oh, yes, of course. But surely you don't think the relics are at the bottom of this? They're rare, but not valuable enough for this. Unless someone knows more about them than I do. I doubt that. I have made a thorough study of the 12th dynasty and King Amenemhet III. It's a carving of his head.
What do you know about a man named Ammon Hyksos? And another whose last name is Drummond?
Hyksos? Ammon Hyksos?
You know him? Does it ring any kind of a bell?
No, I'm afraid not. Drummond means nothing.
Oh, all right. Let's try the 2 attempts on your life. What about them?
Well, they happened on the nights of the 17th and the 18th. Both of them could have been accidental, except that, well, the same small man stood near me both times.
It would be too much for me to hope you could describe him, I suppose.
Well, it was dark. Both times I was on the promenade deck, and something heavy was thrown or pushed from the deck above. I reported the second one, and the ship's officer apologized for the carelessness.
But you thought enough of it to disappear?
Oh, well, I certainly did.
Instead of going to the police?
Yes. Oh, I suppose it was wrong, but you must understand, I was desperate.
Well, we'd better go down to the 3rd floor. I hope the police think more of your story than I do. In 20 minutes, room 317 really looked like a murder scene. The place was swarming with New York's finest, white with fingerprint powder, and blinding with flash bulbs. The lieutenant to whom I made my statement looked as if he thought I was as crazy as I thought everybody else in the mess was. But then he changed his mind.
Dollar? Hey, where is that insurance thing?
Here I am.
Him in the bathroom. Oh, there you are, Dollar.
Yeah, find a suicide note or something?
What'd you say that name was? Ammon,
Hyksos.
Yeah. Well, I guess there aren't too many ways to spell that one, so this must be it. Pillbox.
Let me see that.
Prescription from Alexandria.
Dr. Ammon Hyksos.
We'll put a tracer on that phone number you took off him first thing in the morning.
Yeah. Hey, you going to take Lambert in for questioning?
I guess we'd better. Routine. He's clear as far as I can see.
Well, do something for me, will you? Have your doctors run a test of that plastic cast of his. And call me in my room, huh?
A test for what?
Well, just look it over. It would make a handy blunt instrument if nothing else. Expense account item 3, $7.50. A few late cocktails, a rare steak, and coffee in the Brighton Arms dining room. After which I picked up an armful of extra editions so I could catch up on what I'd been doing. I self-operated my way to the 8th floor and started toward my room. I was looking forward to a hot shower, but I didn't get it. I was still looking forward, but into a familiar gun muzzle.
This is the one, Garrett.
Ah, yes, Mr. Dollar. May I introduce myself, sir? Garrett Drummond at your service. Our meeting has been postponed too long.
Well, there's a difference of opinion on that.
You will please open your door.
How can I refuse that pint-sized invitation you're still carrying?
After you, sir. And I needn't remind you that my friend here is prepared for any rash move upon your part.
Look, I'm tired. I don't have a rash move left in me.
Close the door, Ammon. I suggest that you sit there, Mr. Dollar, in that unsightly straight-back chair.
Thanks a lot.
Now, sir, I shall plunge right to the point. Where is that scoundrel, Bruce Lambert? Well?
I think I just decided that I don't know.
Please, we have no wish for violence.
You always say that with a gun in your hand. Well, let's get started. You make your pitch, I'll make my refusal, and we'll see where we go from there.
I have already made what I consider to be a generous offer for so unimportant a bit of information as merely the whereabouts of Lambert. $2,000. But if it will expedite matters, I am prepared to expand my offer by another $1,000 on the spot, sir.
The higher you bid, the greedier I get. What makes Lambert so important to you?
A problem which is entirely out of your province, my boy. How much do you know of Egyptian legends, sir?
Oh, no more than $1's worth.
Ah, pity. A fascinating subject. Well, sir, Bruce Lambert has in his possession a certain object of great importance, both culturally and economically. Certain landowners in Egypt hold it in such high esteem, sir, that as a reward for its return to them, they would throw open to exploitation untapped oil fields, the richness of which would shake the very foundations of world economy.
Are they shaky enough as it is?
My boy, think what it would mean to a civilization fast approaching the depletion of its petroleum sources. New horizons, sir, a brave new world. Lambert owes to us all relinquishment of this object so that it may serve humanity.
You're right. And it may be easier than you think.
Splendid, sir. Where is he?
Which relic is it? The black statue your playmate could have picked up for free?
It is King Amenemhet's scarab that I would discuss with Lambert. I demand to know where he is.
Why waste time on him? I've got the scarab.
I find that most difficult to believe, Mr. Dollar.
Well, I'll show it.
No. Keep your hands away from your pockets. Ammon will save you the trouble. Ammon.
Please remain still, Mr. Dollar. My wish is for peacefulness.
Sure. Right coat pocket.
He speaks truly, Garrett. Here it is.
What's the matter, Garrett? You don't have that brave new world look anymore.
I should be the first to admit, sir, that the lie has been put to the tale I created upon this useless gewgaw. But, Mr. Dollar, now that we are forced to fall back upon the truth, I remind you that it sometimes hurts. Your position has not been...
The desk knows I'm up here.
Answered, Mr. Dollar. But be cautious. Unfortunately, I do not share Ammon's aversion to violence.
Yeah?
Dollar?
That's right.
This is Lieutenant Black. Say, was that a hunch you had about that cast of Lambert's?
Why do you ask?
Well, if it was a good one. The doctors won't let us take it off, but we cut into it. It was put on in 3 layers. The middle one was wrapped in narcotics.
Yeah?
Don't be so modest, Dollar. There must be $300,000 worth. No, sometimes it's a whole month before we get that much. Looks like the work of your friend, Dr. Ammon Hicks's.
Yeah.
Oh, wake up, Dollar. I want to check Lambert's statement with yours. I'll have you there in 10 minutes. Goodbye.
Okay.
I commend you, sir, upon your show of intelligence. Who was it?
The police. They're looking for Lambert.
Oh, and what did they give as their reason?
Narcotics. The story of a man bound for America who cracked up in a car, and while he was unconscious and being patched, said narcotics were put in his cast by a Dr. Ammon Hicks's, probably assisted by a nurse named Marcia.
But there is no proof.
Ammon, you'll waste no time on evasion. Yes, we used the boy. A courageous scheme, but for that silly goose of a girl. She was the true conspirator, and the traitor as well.
She happened to fall in love with the guy.
The romantic Atlantic crossing. An empty proposal of marriage suddenly becomes more important than actual coin of the realm. But enough of that. The police are looking for him, and odds teeth, so am I. Where is he?
I don't know.
Ammon, call his hotel on 39th Street. No, wait, my friend. The police must be watching that. Are they, Mr. Dollar?
Well, that's where his personal things are. If I were the police, I'd be watching.
Yes, we seem to find ourselves in such a position that we must at least pretend to see eye to eye, sir. Very well. We shall wait here. The chips are down, so to speak. Hammond.
Yes, Garrett.
Take the pistol. Into the bathroom with you. With the door slightly ajar, you shall have a splendid command of the arena, as it were.
Yes, Garrett.
And remember, the stakes are high.
Yes, Garrett, I will remember.
And now, Mr. Dollar, it would seem that little remains but the waiting.
The waiting was more than enough. Drummond settled himself on the bed, facing the door, his pudgy hands folded over his bulging waist. I was still in the desk chair, facing him. As usual, the police were late. 20 minutes passed before we heard the knock on the door.
Your guest, Mr. Dollar. Come, we shall go to the door together. Now, keep your back to me and open it.
It's your party, Drummond. Come in, Lambert.
Not Lambert, the police. Hammond, shoot! Hammond, my friend, help!
Drummond's wound wasn't half as excruciating as his call for help. The doctors report that his shoulder will be in a cast, that as soon as the state of New York can gather a jury, he will stand trial on the charge of first-degree murder. The body of Ammon Hickses was taken to the morgue. As an insurance company, you are probably less interested in that than in the fate of your policyholder, Bruce Lambert. That's explained in expense account item 4, $280 hospital bill paid in advance. In view of the possibility that there may be others interested in that $300,000 cache of narcotics he has to carry around with him until his arm is okay, I thought it would be safer to keep him under wraps. Oh, by the way, while he was lying there, helpless, I sold him a policy for you covering the scarab and that carved head. Expense account total, $456.90. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, stars Edmund O'Brien in the title role and is written by Paul Dudley and Gil Dowd with music by Leith Stevens. Edmund O'Brien can currently be seen starring in Harry M. Popkins' United Artists production, DOA. Featured in our cast were Virginia Gregg, Jay Novello, Ed Begley, John Dehner, and Pat McGeehan. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Jaime Del Valle. Join us again next week when Edmund O'Brien returns in another adventure of
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
$54,000 is burning a little old hole in that little old jackpot of Sing It Again this week, just waiting for somebody to light up the right answer and drop the cash and prizes in his lap or her lap. Dan Seymour gives the gals the same chance he gives the fellas when he starts putting in those calls from coast to coast. So be listening this Saturday when Sing It Again and the $54,000 Phantom Voice come your way on most of these same CBS stations. This program was transcribed in Hollywood. Roy Rowan speaking. This is CBS, where yours truly, Johnny Dollar, meets adventure every Friday night, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
I always loved the writing from that show. While not as flamboyant as Richard Diamond, it is just as colorful. Edward O'Brien was something. He could make you believe that he was a paper bag if you asked him to do it. His list of movies are some of the greatest that Hollywood ever produced and totaled over 100 titles. I think my favorite role of his was DOA. I'm talking the original 1950 version directed by Rudolph Mott. It is considered a classic of the genre. The frantic-paced plot revolves around a doomed man's quest to find out who has poisoned him and why. Now, there have been many remakes of this movie, so make sure you get the 1950 edition. You won't be disappointed. And now we head into the time machine for this moment in time. The date is September 1, 1939, and this is A Moment in Time. When we think of war, sometimes we forget what it means to go to war. In that respect, it was a bit easier for the U.S. because we were fighting over there. But for everyone else, over there was here. And what do you do with the children? Here is a broadcast that tells that story.
The evacuation of British children is going on smoothly and efficiently. The Ministry of Health says that great progress has been made with the first part of the government's arrangements. The railways, the road transport organizations, the local authorities and teachers, the voluntary workers, and not least the householders in the reception areas are all playing their parts splendidly.
We're on number 12 platform at Waterloo Station, one of the 10 big metropolitan stations that are engaged today on the evacuation of London's school children. We're on number 12 platform, the train's in, and the children are just arriving, coming along in their school groups with a banner in front saying what school they are. This lot's St. John's School, Walworth, which is south of the river, and then they follow behind. The tiny tots in front, leading up to the bigger ones, the 12, 13-year-olds behind, and here comes a high school. More like 14, 15, and 16. They're being evacuated too.
Now, a few days later, on September 3rd.
This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
We're standing in the pouring rain at the side of a French road, a road squelching with mud and lined right away over the plain to the far skyline with the inevitable double row of poplars. It's a grey, cold, dismal day. A few lorries only are splashing by to and from the forward areas. But coming down the road towards us is a battalion that I know to be of a famous Irish regiment. They're marching in threes, and in their full battle dress and kit, they blend with the dripping green grass of the roadside and the brown of the haystacks. As they passed us on that road, with their brown capes glistening and their tin hats perched on their heads, I thought how similar this must be to pictures of the last war. The road, the trees, the rain, and the everlasting beat of feet.
I leave you with this thought. Today, we face war on many fronts, and our men and women fight bravely wherever they are sent. But what if it all happened here? This has been A Moment in Time. Well, I have a bit more news for you this week. I spoke to Jason, my Horror Express co-host, and he and his wife are still recovering from the hurricane that swept through their area. Irma did some serious damage to the city, but Jason and Fran survived the storm, as did their home. They did find a rather large limb just a few feet from the house that surely would have done some serious damage. Wow. They just got their power back as I'm reading this. However, with all the storm-related issues going on, we're gonna have to delay the Horror Express. The good news is, Jason has told me he can't wait to tell you all of his stories of Irma. I have to say, I can't wait either. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Ron's Amazing Stories. I want to thank Brenda for the great story and remind all of you to send in yours to the show. It's all up to you. I can't say what we'll have on next week's show simply because I just don't know. So tune in and see. If you want to keep up with what's happening on Ron's Amazing Stories, please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or sign up for the weekly newsletter. All the links you'll need and access to the blog can be found at ronsamazingstories.com. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.